Smoke filled the sky like dark clouds after a storm. The ground shook with every explosion. It was the final hour of a long and bloody war between humans and the alien empire called Xerelians. Among the burning metal and broken machines, a human soldier named Jack stumbled through the battlefield. His uniform was torn, his arm was bleeding. And he had no idea if anyone else was alive. He had lost his unit hours ago. The communication system was dead. Only the screams of dying soldiers. And the fire around him kept him company. Jack coughed as smoke filled his lungs. He walked over broken ground, searching for survivors. Even enemies. That's when he heard it, a soft, weak sound. Not a cry, not a scream, but a breath. He followed the sound and found a strange figure, lying between two fallen pillars. It was a woman, but not human. Her skin was pale gold, almost glowing in the dark. And her long silver hair was tangled with blood and ash. Her armor was cracked. Her leg crushed under debris, but her eyes were open, bright, violet, and full of fire. She looked at him with hatred, pain, and confusion. Jack raised his hands slowly. "Easy. I'm not here to fight," he said. The alien woman tried to speak, but coughed up blood. "You're human," she whispered. "And you're alive?" Jack said, kneeling beside her. He noticed the symbol on her chest plate too. Wasn't any normal rank. This woman was someone important, maybe even a leader, but to Jack, she was just someone dying, and he couldn't walk away. "You should finish me," she whispered. "That's what your kind does." Jack shook his head. "I don't kill the wounded," he said. "I save them." He tried to lift the metal off her leg, but it was too heavy, gritting his teeth. He pushed harder until it moved. The woman cried out in pain, but didn't stop him. He wrapped her leg with torn cloth from his uniform. She stared at him like he was a ghost. No one from your side would ever do this," she said softly. Jack looked into her eyes and said, "Maybe I'm not like the others." He lifted her into his arms. Even though his ribs screamed in pain, she was heavier than she looked, and his legs almost gave out, but he didn't stop. He walked one step at a time, through fire and broken stone. He had no map, no help, just his will to live on. Now, her life in his hands too. She looked up at him with confusion. "Why?" she asked. Jack didn't answer right away. After a moment, he said, "Because someone has to stop the hate. They passed dead soldiers from both sides." Jack tried not to look at their faces. His heart was heavy, but his grip on her was strong. Every step burned his muscles. Still, he kept moving. Suddenly, a shadow passed above them, a drone scanning the area. Jack ducked under a broken wall and held his breath. The alien woman, still in his arms, covered his head with her own cloak. The drone passed without seeing them. They both breathed out, eyes locked for a moment. Jack said, "What's your name?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Illyria." It was a beautiful name. Soft and strong, he nodded. "I'm Jack." Illyria looked away. "You're carrying the enemy queen," she said quietly. Jack stopped walking, stunned. "Queen?" She was the ruler of the Xerelians. He looked at her again, and now he saw the elegance, the pride in her eyes, even in pain, but he didn't put her down. "I don't care," he said finally. "You're hurt, and I'm not leaving you." Illyria blinked, like she didn't believe him. "You're either very stupid," she said, "or very brave." Jack smiled. Maybe both. The battlefield behind them burned. Ahead was unknown. Danger at every corner. But in that moment, between two enemies who should have hated each other, something else began. Not trust, not yet, but something more powerful than orders or flags' hope. Jack took a deep breath and kept walking 30 miles to safety, with a queen in his arms, and no idea how this story would end. Asterisk, the sky stayed gray. The wind carried the smell of fire and ash. Jack walked carefully, one foot in front of the other, holding Queen Illyria close to his chest. His back ached, His arms trembled. But he didn't stop. Illyria was silent at first, but her eyes kept watching him every time he stumbled. She looked surprised that he didn't put her down. "Where are we going?" she finally asked. Jack looked around the burned land. "There's an old human supply station east of here, maybe 20 more miles. You don't even know if it's still standing." She said, "Nope," Jack answered, "but it's better than standing here and waiting to die." Illyria let out a quiet breath, half a laugh, half a sigh. "You're insane," she said softly. Jack smiled. "Maybe, but I've made it this far." They moved past a ruined building, black smoke still rising from its cracks. Jack avoided open roads, staying low, his soldier instincts guiding him. Illyria felt every bump, every shift of his tired body. Yet he never dropped her, never complained. "You're bleeding," she said, noticing the dark stain growing under his ribs. "I know," he replied. "Had worse on my birthday once?" "That doesn't sound like a good birthday," Jack chuckled. It wasn't. The wind picked up, and with it came strange sounds. Growls, metallic footsteps, and mechanical clicks. Illyria tensed in his arms. "Scouts," she whispered. "Cerelian hunter drones." Jack's jaw clenched. "Then we need to keep moving." They ducked into the shadows of a broken tower. Jack leaned against a wall, breathing heavily. His arms were shaking, his vision blurred. But he still didn't put her down. "Put me down," Illyria said. "I can walk." Jack glanced at her crushed leg and raised an eyebrow. "You're brave, Your Majesty. But I'm not that cruel. You'll die carrying me," she whispered. "Then I'll die trying," he said simply. She looked at him with wide eyes. In her world, leaders were protected, not carried. Weakness was punished, not held in gentle hands. No one had ever touched her like this, with pain in their body, but softness in their eyes. "You don't know who I really am," she said again. "You already told me you're the queen." He replied, "I mean what I've done." Her voice was low now, almost shaking. "I ordered attacks, sent fleets, signed death." Jack nodded. "Maybe you did," he said, "but today, you're just someone who needs help." They rested a moment before moving again. Every mile felt longer than the last. Jack limped, pain crawling up his spine. But Illyria kept talking, trying to keep him awake. She told him about her homeworld's Rella Prime, a place of light towers and floating gardens. He listened quietly, picturing it in his head. "Why did we go to war?" he asked after a while. She was quiet for a long time, then finally said, "Because both sides were too proud to listen." Jack nodded slowly. "Sounds about right." Suddenly, a sound made them both freeze. A tall drone floated above them. Scanning the area with red eyes, Jack ducked, holding Illyria tighter. The drone beeped and fired a light pulse. They rolled behind a rock, just in time. Jack pulled out his small plasma sidearm and aimed. One shot, two. The drone sparked and dropped from the sky. Smoke hissed from its metal chest. Jack sat back, panting hard. "You just killed one of your kind's worst nightmares," Illyria said, almost impressed. "Remind me to brag later," Jack muttered, wiping sweat from his forehead. As they continued, the sun began to set, turning the sky red and gold. Jack stopped on a hill to catch his breath. Below them, far in the distance, was a half-broken outpost, maybe the supply station he hoped for. "We're close," he whispered. Illyria looked too. But she wasn't looking at the building. She was looking at him. "You're different from what I was taught," she said. "I thought humans were brutal, angry, cruel." Jack shrugged. "Some of us are. Some of us try not to be." "You don't even know what will happen if you bring me there." "I know," he said. "I know they might shoot us both." She frowned. "Then why keep walking?" Jack looked at her and said, Because I want to believe something better is possible. Illyria didn't speak again, but she reached up, gently resting her hand on his chest. It was a quiet thank you. Full of meaning, not as a queen, not as an enemy, but as a person. They continued their long march to enemies. Walking through the ashes of war, not knowing what waited at the end, but not giving up, because sometimes, in the middle of pain and battle, hope is born not from victory, but from kindness. The night was cold and silent. The stars above looked sharp, like blades hanging in the sky. Jack found a collapsed shelter near the old road. Half covered by vines and rubble, it wasn't safe, but it was dry and hidden. He lowered Illyria carefully onto a flat stone surface and sat beside her. Breathing heavily, "You need rest," Illyria said, her voice softer than before. Jack nodded slowly. "So do you." He looked at her leg. It was still swollen and bruised. He had nothing but cloth and a small med kit. Still, he did his best to clean the wound. Illyria didn't flinch, not even once. She just watched him closely. "You've done this before," she said, "too many times." Jack replied, not looking up. They sat in silence for a while, only the crackling of small fire keeping them company. Then Illyria spoke again, this time in a whisper. "You should know who I really am." Jack looked up, confused. "You told me already," he said. "You're the queen." "No," she said firmly. "I didn't tell you everything." She took a deep breath, and her violet eyes locked onto his. "My name is Illyria Valthan," she said. "Supreme Sovereign of Zarella, daughter of the Burning Crown, and keeper of the Star Pact." Jack blinked. "That's a lot of titles. They matter in my world." She said, "But out here, none of it helped me." She pulled back part of her armor to reveal a hidden device near her heart, a glowing mark, almost like a living tattoo. Pulsed gently with gold light. "This is the royal crest," she said. "Only one in a generation bears it." Jack stared at it for a long moment, then leaned back against the wall. "Well," he said, "guess I really picked up the wrong girl." Illyria laughed for the first time, a real, tired laugh. "You're not afraid?" "I should be." Jack replied, "But you've been in my arms for miles, and you haven't stabbed me yet." Illyria looked away, thinking, "You humans confuse me," she said. "You fight like demons, yet you show mercy like poets." Jack smiled. "Some of us are both." She turned serious again. "What I didn't tell you is this. I tried to stop the war." Jack's eyes widened. "My father wanted blood," she continued. "He thought humans were a danger to the galaxy. I was young, but I spoke out. I argued for peace." Jack said nothing. Letting her speak, they silenced me. Exiled me from the war councils. I was allowed to wear the crown, but not use its power. So I came to the front lines to see the truth myself. Her hands trembled slightly. "I never expected to fall or to be found by a human." Jack looked at her for a long moment. "You don't seem evil," he said. "You just seem tired." "I am," she whispered. "Tired of death, tired of pride, tired of pretending." There was something raw in her voice, now something no crown could hide. Jack leaned forward. "If you had power," he asked, "would you still want peace?" "Yes," she said without hesitation, "but my people would call me weak." "Then maybe they need to see you carried out of a battlefield by an enemy soldier." He said, "Maybe that'll teach them what strength really is." Illyria's eyes softened again. "You don't talk like a soldier," she said. Jack grinned. "I used to be a teacher." She blinked. "Really?" "History," he said. "Funny how it keeps repeating." A sudden howl in the distance made them both freeze. Jack stood quickly, scanning the shadows. Illyria reached into her armor and pulled out a thin silver rod. With a flick, it turned into a glowing blade. "You had a weapon this whole time?" Jack said, surprised. "I was waiting to see if I'd need it," she said. standing on one foot, wincing. Jack pulled out his pistol again, standing shoulder to shoulder with her. They watched as a shadow passed behind the rocks, then silence. After a moment, nothing came. False alarm, maybe, but they stayed alert. As they sat down again, Jack looked at her differently now. Not just as a queen, or an alien, or a burden, but as someone with a soul full of fire and regret. He could feel something changing deep inside her, and maybe inside him too. "You should sleep," Illyria said. Noticing his tired eyes, Jack nodded. "Wake me if your royal guards come to kill me." She smirked. "I'll protect you." They both smiled. Knowing the line between enemies and allies had already started to blur, the fire burned low. But the warmth between them stayed outside. The war continued to rage, but inside that small shelter, something else was growing. Not a treaty, not yet, but something stronger: trust. The next morning came with red skies and cold wind. Jack woke up to find Illyria already awake, sitting upright, watching the horizon. Her face looked calm, but her eyes were sharp. "Something's coming," she said quietly. Jack looked around, then heard a Tua low hum in the air. "Scout ships," Illyria whispered. "My people." Jack cursed under his breath. "Will they rescue you?" She didn't answer right away. "If they find me with a human, they might shoot first and ask questions later." Jack nodded slowly. "Then we don't let them find us." He helped her stand, one arm over his shoulder. Her leg still hurt, but she could walk a few steps now. Every step sent pain up her spine, but she didn't complain. They moved through a narrow canyon, the sound of search drones growing louder behind them. "This is your land now," Illyria said. "We've crossed into the southern front." Jack looked around at the rocky cliffs and broken towers. "Then I know a place we can hide," he said. A memory flashed in his mind: a hidden bunker used during earlier missions. If it's not buried, it might still work. As they moved deeper into enemy territory, the land changed. Old battle scars covered the ground, and strange alien symbols glowed faintly on cracked walls. "This was once a Zarelian temple," Illyria said, her voice low. "It's been turned to rubble." Jack replied. She touched a stone gently, as if remembering something lost. They reached the hidden bunker by noon. Covered in vines and dust, Jack used a stone to pry open the steel hatch, coughing as old air hissed out. Inside, it was dark and cold, but safe for now. They went down slowly, Illyria leaning on him the whole way. Once inside, Jack found an old light panel and hit the switch. The room blinked to life-dim yellow lights glowing above them. Old supplies, broken cums, and water containers sat untouched in the corners. Illyria sat down on a bench and let out a tired breath. "This place smells like oil and rust," she said. "Smells like safety to me," Jack replied with a smile. He cleaned her wound again while she looked at him quietly. "You've risked your life more than once," she said, "just to carry me." Jack shrugged. "It's what we're supposed to do." "No," she said. "It's what you chose to do." He didn't respond right away. Instead, he stood up and walked to the far wall, where an old flag hung half-burned, half-faded. It was the human army's emblem. Jack stared at it. Lost in thought, "I used to believe we were the good guys," he said, "until I saw what both sides became." Illyria looked at the flag too. "We believed the same thing," she said, "that we were right and everyone else was wrong." She paused, then added, "My father would execute me if he saw me here." Jack turned to her. "Then let's make sure he doesn't." Suddenly, a loud beep echoed from the hatch above. Jack froze. Illyria's hand went to her side, reaching for the energy blade. The hatch creaked, and voices spoke in Zarelian. "They found us," Illyria whispered. Jack moved quickly, powering down the lights and guiding her into a dark corner behind stacked crates. 3 alien soldiers dropped into the bunker, their armor glowing faintly blue. One of them carried a scanner, sweeping it slowly across the room. Jack held his breath, pistol ready. Illyria placed her hand gently on his, her eyes telling him wait. The soldiers moved around, checking the space. One of them stepped closer to the crates, almost touching the edge. Then, suddenly, a call came over. There comes an alien tongue orders to fall back. They paused, then climbed back up the hatch without seeing them. The door closed and silence returned. Jack exhaled slowly. That was close. Illyria leaned against the crates, her breath shaky. If they had seen you, they'd kill you without question, but they didn't, he said. Helping her back to the bench, she sat down, eyes still wide. You stayed calm, Jack said. Impressed. I've had years of training, she answered, but I've never felt fear like this. Jack tilted his head. Why now? Because now I have something to lose, she whispered, looking at him. Jack's heart skipped. But he said nothing. They stayed in the bunker for hours, talking quietly. About their homes, their families, their fears. Illyria shared stories of her mother, a kind queen who once gave food to human refugees before the war began. Jack shared memories of his little sister, how she would paint stars on the roof of their old house. As the stars outside blinked into the night sky, something shifted between them, to people, born to hate each other, now sitting side by side in silence and safety. Not enemies, not friends, something more. Something waiting to bloom, tomorrow. Jack said. We move again. Illyria nodded. And if they find us again? Tay smiled softly. Then we face them together. The next morning came cold and quiet. Jack helped Illyria out of the bunker, the sky above turning pale blue. The air smelled of burnt metal and distant smoke. Their path would lead them through a valley full of old war machines' twisted wreckage. From both sides, Jack called it the Valley of Bones. As they moved between rusted hulls and broken drones, Illyria kept close to him. Her limp had lessened, but her legs still hurt with each step. Still, she refused to be carried. I walk on my own now, she said, her chin raised like a queen again. Jack smiled. Yes, Your Majesty. They reached a narrow pass just as the sun rose fully. But something felt wrong. Jack paused, listening. His instincts screamed ambush. Suddenly, energy bolts shot out from the rocks above. A blast struck the ground near them, sending dirt flying. Jack pulled Illyria down behind a wrecked vehicle. 3 armored Zarelian soldiers appeared, shouting in their native tongue. But these weren't scouts. They wore royal colors, gold and blue. Illyria's eyes went wide. My elite guards? She whispered. Jack raised his weapon. Are they here to rescue you? She didn't answer, her face pale. I don't think so, she said. One of the soldiers shouted. Release the human, Your Grace. Jack blinked. They know who I am. They've been watching, Illyria said, standing slowly. Jack grabbed her arm. What are you doing? She looked at him with fire in her eyes. Protecting you. She stepped out into the open, limping but standing tall. I am Queen Illyria Valthan, she declared. And this man is under my protection. The guards hesitated, shocked. One of them said, He's the enemy. He carried me through fire and blood, she shouted. Where were you when I was dying? The lead guard stepped forward, raising his weapon. It's not your place to choose who lives, he said. Illyria's voice turned cold. Then come test my will. The tension in the air cracked like thunder. Jack couldn't stay hidden. He stepped out beside her, weapon lowered. I don't want to fight you, he said to the guards, but I won't let you hurt her. That moment changed everything. The guards looked at each other, confused. This wasn't how enemies behaved. This wasn't war anymore. This was something else. Illyria reached out and took Jack's hand in front of them all. I choose him, she said, loud and clear. I choose him as my protector, my companion, my mate. The words hit like an explosion. Jack's eyes widened. Wait, what? In Zarelian law, she whispered to him, A royal can name a mate to stop all claims of harm. Jack blinked. A little warning next time. She smirked. You would have said no. The lead guard lowered his weapon slowly. If she has named you her mate, no one can harm you under royal law, he said. Jack breathed out, not sure if he should laugh or panic. The guards turned and disappeared into the hills. Their mission over, Jack looked at Illyria, still holding her. Handmaid, huh? He said. Temporary, she replied, blushing slightly. Right, he said. Totally temporary. They sat beside the wreckage for a while, the air finally still. Jack wrapped a cloth around his arm where a shard had cut him during the fight. Illyria leaned close, helping him tie it. Their hands touched, and this time, neither pulled away. You could have let them take you, Jack said quietly. I didn't want to, she replied. I wanted to stand beside you. That night, they made camp beneath a broken bridge. Illyria used her blade to light a small fire. They sat close, not speaking much. But the silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was full of meaning. Jack finally asked, Do you mean what you said about choosing me? She looked at him, her violet eyes soft under the firelight. I don't say things I don't mean, she answered. But you're human, she added, almost teasing, and you're a stubborn alien queen. He replied. They both laughed, the kind of laugh that comes after danger, after fear. A laugh full of relief and strange new feelings. That night, Jack dreamed of peace, not as a soldier, not as a hero, but as a man who carried something precious, not just a queen, but a bond born of fire, blood, and the choice to see each other not as enemies, but as something more. The sun rose behind the mountains as Jack and Illyria stood on the last ridge. Far below them, nestled between rocky cliffs, was the capital of Zarella, a massive city of shining towers, floating bridges, and glowing blue lights. Jack stared at it, amazed. He had fought against this place for years. But now he was walking into it beside the queen. Illyria stood tall. Though her legs still throbbed with pain, her hand gripped Jack's firmly. This is where everything changes, she said softly. Jack nodded. Do they know we're coming? She shook her head. Not yet. They walked down the ridge slowly, watched by hidden eyes. Zarellian drones hovered in the sky, scanning them silently. Jack kept his hands visible. His weapon holstered, Illyria walked with her crest glowing on her chest, announcing who she was as they entered the outer gates. A group of armored royal guards surrounded them, weapons raised, voices sharp. Queen Illyria, you are injured. Who is this human? The captain demanded. Jack stood still, but his heart pounded. Illyria stepped forward without fear. This man saved my life, she said. He carried me through fire and death. The guards didn't lower their weapons. He is still the enemy. One of them said coldly. Illyria raised her voice, strong and royal. I name him my chosen, she said. By royal law, you will not harm him. The guards hesitated. Confused and shocked, never in Zarellian history had a queen chosen. A human, but none dared defy the crown. They stepped aside, and the path to the palace opened. Inside, the air was cold and silent. Servants stared in disbelief as Jack passed through the crystal halls. Some whispered, some turned away in anger. Illyria walked without shame, her hand never leaving his. They entered the grand throne room, tall pillars, glowing walls, and a throne of light in the center. The royal council stood waiting, robes flowing, faces full of judgment. At the center of them all was High Minister Velox, her father's most loyal advisor. He stepped forward, eyes sharp. Illyria, he said, what is the meaning of this? She faced him, voice calm. I was left to die, she said. My own soldiers abandoned me. This human carried me across battlefields, protected me, and risked death for me. Velox narrowed his eyes. "And now you bring him here. Like a trophy." "No," she said. "Like a symbol," the council murmured. Some in shock, some in anger. Velox stepped closer to Jack, looking him up and down. "You expect us to trust him?" Jack finally spoke. "I don't expect anything," he said. "But I didn't carry her for reward. I carried her because I couldn't leave someone behind." His words were simple, but they hit deep. Even the oldest council members were silent. Illyria stepped forward again. "I am queen now, not my father," she said, "and I will decide what peace looks like." Velox's voice turned cold. "You think the people will accept this?" "They will," she said, "because I do, outside the palace." Word began to spread that the queen had returned, that she had survived because a human had saved her, and that she had chosen him. Crowds gathered outside the city walls. Some shouted, some cried, some stood in silence for the first time in years. They saw their queen not as a warrior, but as a survivor. Inside, Illyria turned to Jack. "They will watch you closely," she said. "They will try to break this." Jack nodded. "Let them try," she smiled faintly. "You really are stubborn. And you really did just make me your mate in front of the galaxy," he said. "I did," she whispered. "And I don't regret it." That night, the stars above Zarella glowed brighter than ever. From the highest tower, Illyria stood beside Jack. Looking down at her city, "The war may not be over," she said. "But this is how it begins to end." Jack looked at her, eyes full of something deeper than duty, and for the first time, she leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. Not as a queen, not as a symbol, but as a woman who had found something unexpected, a man who had walked through fire for her. And she, in turn, had returned to walk into the fire with him. 2 weeks passed since Queen Illyria returned to the capital with a human soldier by her side. The galaxy was still watching, confused and divided. Some saw her as a traitor. Others saw her as a hope for peace. But no one could deny what she had done. She had chosen a humanoid as a prisoner, not as a trophy, but as her mate. Inside the palace, change was beginning. The throne room, once filled with war maps and weapons, now held a round table for dialogue. Leaders from smaller star systems came quietly, curious about the rumors. Even some human diplomats arrived under secret protection, all because one man had carried a queen through fire. Jack didn't wear armor anymore. He wore simple clothes, but his presence was strong. The palace staff began to treat him differently, not as an outsider, but as someone important, not because of power, but because of what he had done without expecting anything in return. Illyria stood beside him in every meeting. Her voice remained strong, but her eyes softened when she looked at him. Together, they listened to cries for peace and stories of grief from both sides. Together, they planted something new, a future. But not everyone supported them. In the shadows of the city, some Zarellian nobles plotted. They saw Jack as a threat to their control. They called him the Softener, the man who weakened the queen. One night, a message arrived, cold, sharp, and deadly. "Send the human away, or lose your crown." Illyria read it in silence, her hands trembling for the first time in years. Jack saw her worry. "What's wrong?" he asked. She didn't answer at first. Finally, she handed him the message. Jack read it slowly, then folded it carefully. "You knew this would happen," he said. "I did," she whispered. "But I hoped we had more time." Jack nodded. "So what now?" "We don't give in," she said, her voice firm again. The next morning, Illyria called for a public gathering. The square filled with thousands of citizens, cameras, drones, and news broadcasts blinking to life. Jack stood behind her as she stepped forward to the center. Her voice echoed across the plaza. "I was left to die," she said. "But a man I was told to hate saved me. He didn't ask who I was," she continued. He didn't ask what I had done. He just carried me. People listened. In silence, even those who once called her weak now stared with wide eyes. I chose him, she said. Not because of law or fear. I chose him because he reminded me what we lost during this war our humanity. She turned, reaching for Jack's hand, pulling him beside her. This man is no enemy. She said, he is my bond, my truth, and if peace must begin somewhere, let it begin here. The crowd remained quiet. Then slowly, a sound began, not cheers, not yet, but clapping soft at first, then stronger. Then came a voice. Long live the Queen. Another voice followed. Long live the Peaceborn. The word caught fire. Peaceborn, a name whispered across the city, across planets, across both sides of the war. Later that night, Illyria and Jack stood on the balcony. Watching the lights flicker across the capital, he leaned on the railing, tired but smiling. You gave a speech, he said. And a title, Illyria smirked. It fits you. I carried you. And now I carry a name, he said. You carry more than that. She said softly. You carry my hope. They stood in silence for a while, the stars blinking like old memories. Then she turned to him. What will you do now? Jack looked at her with steady eyes. Whatever it takes, he said, to make sure this peace lasts. She stepped closer, placing her forehead gently against his. Then, let's walk this path together, she whispered. From that night on, the title, Peaceborn, spread beyond borders. It wasn't just a name, it became a symbol of one man's courage, one queen's choice, and a love that defied war. And in the years to come, when children asked where the peace began, they were told of a wounded queen, a stubborn human. And 30 miles of dust and fire, a journey that began with a soldier's arms, and ended with the bond of two hearts, a journey that changed the stars.